Hi everyone, I hope you're all having a great week. This week I'm posting a video of a portrait study I did using dark skin tones. Here you can see I've displayed all of the paint I used to start my painting. You can find a complete list of the supplies I used in my video description down below. For me, painting a study means that I'm purely creating for myself as a learning opportunity, as I have no intention of selling this painting and I'm still working on building my skills. I usually like to lay out all my paint on palette paper and then I start mixing my paint. In the video description down below, I've also included a list of links that I found really useful for mixing skin tones. Of course, before I get to laying out my paints and mixing them, I start by doing a sketch of my portrait model directly on the canvas board. If sketching is a skill you're still trying to master, but you'd like to get your feet wet and try painting right away, it's okay to print out your reference photo in the dimensions you'd like for your portrait, and then, using transfer paper, you can trace the outlines of your model onto the surface you'll be painting. When I'm ready to start painting, I first build a tonal base on my canvas using acrylic paint, like I'm doing here. In this part of the painting process, I'm studying the light and dark values in my subject. Though I've enjoyed drawing people most of my life, I'm still relatively new to portrait painting. I'm going to do my best to explain the different steps I've taken in my process as I go along in the video. But if you have any questions or if anything is left unclear, please don't hesitate to ask questions or post comments in the section below, and I'll be happy to help you in any way I can. Once my acrylic underpainting is dry, I'm ready to start working with oil paints. I won't lie, this part of the painting process is sometimes, well, oftentimes, if not all the time, a bit scary and daunting for me, and it's not always easy to know exactly where to start. So, to get things going, I usually find it easier to start on small areas where I feel a little bit more comfortable and slowly build towards working on the bigger areas. Now we're getting into the section that really tests my fortitude and courage as an artist, the ugly phase of the portrait. I've heard many other artists refer to this part of the process as the ugly phase, and I'm glad I'm not alone. It's all about color blocking, trying to study the different shades of color, the different values of darkness and light, and basically trying to put a puzzle together, but you haven't really gotten to the part where all the pieces are clear to you yet. This video has been sped up multiple times, so I promise you won't have to bear witness to this part of the process for very long. As I'm painting, the process is much slower, and at times I have to say it almost feels like torture, and it's just about everything in me to not put my brushes down and walk away from the process altogether. The first and most important step to take here is to breathe. When you're in this challenging part of the process, it can feel never-ending, but I promise you the best way to get through it is to keep going despite your doubts. This is also usually when the negative voice of self-doubt starts to creep into your mind. It's good to acknowledge the thoughts, because your fear is telling you that you are being challenged, and being challenged is not a bad thing. Facing challenges is how we grow. So the best thing to do here is just to keep at it. When you're feeling stuck in one place, move on to a different section of the painting and keep at it. At one point, you'll get through it. And slowly but surely here, I'm getting through it too. As you can see, I'm no expert at color mixing, and skin tones in particular are still a pretty big challenge for me. But I keep trying, and I think over time I am getting better at it. Art is a lot about experimentation and trial and error, so it's important to try different things, see what works, see what doesn't work, and to learn from them. There's still a lot I want to change in this painting, but I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Working fat over lean refers to an oil painting principle that consists of applying paint with a higher ratio of oil to color pigments over paint with a lower ratio of oil to color pigments. This can ensure a more flexible paint film that will not crack over time. When you're working with oil paints and your layers are getting thicker, it can become harder to control your paint. At this point, it's usually a good idea to stop and give it a few days to dry before continuing. Once the painting felt dry to the touch, I started working on it again. And I added some transparent red oxide and transparent yellow oxide to my palette. There are still quite a few areas I want to rework in this painting. But to get the process going again, I like to start by working on an area that I feel more comfortable with, like in this instance, the eyes, so that I can get back into my workflow. Sometimes you make an adjustment to an area in your painting and it just doesn't seem to work. The beauty of working with oil paints, though, is that you have a long working time. So I like to move on to a different section when this happens and work on something different for a little bit, and over time I find solutions to what I was struggling with. Okay, that's not gonna work. That won't work either. Okay, now I think I'm starting to head in the right direction. The initial coloring in this area of the painting was all wrong, and after reworking it, I'm a whole lot happier with the results. I'm now slowly but surely working towards the final finishing touches of my painting, and I'm feeling much happier with how it's going than I was during the ugly stage. Oil painting is really a lot about patience, being patient with yourself and the products you're using. My parents bought me an oil painting kit when I was a kid, and the first time I tried it, I made a complete mess. I was young, inexperienced, and had no guidance, so it was a really challenging product for me to work with. It took many years after that for me to pick up the medium again and start working with it. When I finally had the courage and the resolve to try it again, I decided the best way to start would be for me to take a course online. And let me tell you, it was so helpful for me to do so, not only because it explained all of the different materials I needed, but it helped me figure out the best way to start working with these paints. If you're interested in getting started with oil paints, I really recommend that you take a course or that you do some research on YouTube even to find people with a lot of experience. There is a ton of information out there that can help guide you, and really it will save you a lot of time, money, and frustration along the way. Since I'm new to the portrait painting process, I promised myself a while ago that I would release myself from the pressure of having to create an exact likeness of the model I'm painting during my process. It seems like it would just be a very unrealistic goal for me at this point, as I'm still learning a lot about color mixing and values and value shifts and shapes in a face, and there's really a lot to learn. So it's important when you're going along to remind yourself of where you're at in your learning process and to go easy on yourself. Contrary to the ugly phase of the painting process, the finishing touches part of the process is really a lot of fun, and it's so satisfying to see the painting starting to come together and to feel like you've been able to overcome the challenges you were faced with in the beginning. Here I'm using a glaze of darker color to help blend some of those lights I just put on her lips, and I feel like it really helps to make her lips pop more. An important part of any creative process is really knowing when to stop. And sometimes you have to give yourself permission to stop. Though a study could turn into a masterpiece, for me this process was really all about learning and improving my skills as an oil painter, and in particular improving my skills in painting portraits with oils. So I'm not trying to create a masterpiece, and I'm not trying to sell this piece. I'm creating it mostly for myself. So it's okay for me to stop when I feel I'm ready to do so. I've learned a lot. There's still things that I feel I could improve upon. The hair was an interesting challenge for me, but I'm gonna do some more research and I'll get back to it when I feel ready to do so. But for now, I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I'm so thankful that you joined me on this journey. What a fun mess that was to make. I hope this video provided you with some useful tips to get started. Have a wonderful week and happy creating!